All right, let's get right into it. If you've ever planned something massive, a life-changing project, a new business, maybe a fitness journey, and then found yourself sitting there doing absolutely nothing about it, I really need you to hear this right now. It is not because you're lazy. It's not some kind of moral failing. There is literally a biological, neurological cycle happening inside your brain that is actively preventing you from pursuing your dreams. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how that works and, most importantly, how to fix it.
Seriously, why do we do this? You buy the fancy planners, you set the alarms, you write out these perfect goals, and then crickets. Nothing happens. It's a completely universal experience, right? But it creates this massive, frustrating gap between who we want to be and what we actually do on a daily basis. Well, before we can close that gap, we absolutely have to bust the biggest myth out there about human productivity.
Section 1. The Time Management Myth.
So to really understand this, we have to look at the incredible work of cognitive scientist Tim Pychyl. He has literally spent over 2 decades studying this exact phenomenon, and his core finding is an absolute game changer. He says procrastination is an emotion regulation problem. Just let that sink in for a second. It is not a time management problem. Your inability to start that difficult task has absolutely nothing to do with poor scheduling or not having the right calendar app or needing some complex new morning routine.
See, when you have a daunting task sitting in front of you, like starting a giant creative project or hitting submit on a massive application, your brain honestly couldn't care less about the clock. It only looks at how that task makes you feel. And just thinking about doing that work generates some seriously heavy negative emotions. We're talking self-doubt, total overwhelm, anxiety, and that profound, paralyzing fear that whatever you do just won't be good enough. And your brain, well, it absolutely hates negative emotions. So what does it naturally do? It tries to escape. Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 2, your brain's avoidance loop.
This is where things get super biological. We aren't just talking about a bad habit here. This is a chemical reinforcement system firing off right inside your head. When you flee a scary, overwhelming task and say start mindlessly scrolling on your phone instead, your brain instantly gets a hit of relief. Psh! Suddenly, that heavy dread is gone. But here's the super dangerous part. In psychology, behaviors that get rewarded get repeated. And that short-term relief, that is a massive reward. So you are automatically training your brain to default to this exact escape route every single time you face something hard.
Think of this like an internal boxing match. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a biological tug-of-war inside your brain. On one side, you have the amygdala. This is your brain's alarm system. It's totally designed to detect threats. If a task feels overwhelming, the amygdala treats it like a literal physical predator. It just screams, "Run, this is dangerous." On the other side, pulling back, is the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Now this is your rational action taker. Its whole job is to take that fear signal, realize it's illogical, shut it down, and push you to act anyway.
So here is the crucial point. When you procrastinate, the amygdala is straight up winning. This is what we call an amygdala hijack. Your emotional, panicky brain is completely overriding your logical, rational brain. And the scariest part of the science? Every single time you go through this avoidance loop, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways for procrastination in your head. Like the old neuroscience saying goes, what you repeat, you become. Your discipline circuit basically atrophies like an unused muscle, and procrastination becomes your biologically hardwired default.
Section 3. The sneaky procrastination disguises. Because, simply sitting around doing nothing triggers a brand new negative emotion, guilt. And your brain has to cleverly disguise your avoidance so you don't feel that guilt. The first major disguise is perfectionism. Now, we usually think of perfectionists as these ultra-high achievers, right? But the research shows people who score higher in perfectionism are actually much bigger procrastinators. They are so terrified their work won't be utterly flawless that they just never begin. In fact, studies show that highly perfectionist professors actually publish fewer papers than their colleagues. Why? Because perfectionism guarantees you never start, which means you never ever risk falling short.
And then there's the second disguise, which is honestly the sneakiest one of all, productive procrastination. Researchers actually call this short-term mood repair. You see, you aren't just sitting on the couch eating junk food. You swap out the scary, high-stakes task for a safer, low-risk task. It gives you this total false sense of accomplishment without any actual risk of failure or judgment.
Come on, tell me you haven't done at least one of these recently. Spending an entire hour color-coding your notes instead of actually writing the essay. Tweaking the margins on your resume for the 5th time instead of just sending it out. reading 10 different books on how to start a business instead of just launching the thing. Or, hey, maybe even watching this exact educational explainer right now instead of working on that project you're supposed to be doing. We do these completely ridiculous, low-stakes things to feel incredibly busy without ever moving the needle on the scary stuff that actually matters.
Which brings us to Section 4, the pager study.
To show you just how incredibly terrible our brains are at predicting our own feelings, researchers ran this amazing, famous study. This was back before smartphones, so they gave 45 students actual physical pagers. For 5 days leading up to a major academic deadline, they paged these students 8 times a day. Every time that pager beeped, the students had to log exactly what they were doing and how they were feeling about their looming assignment.
Sure enough, early in the week, the students consistently put off the hard tasks for fun stuff. But what's truly fascinating was how they justified it. They used the exact same excuses we all use every day. Oh, I'll feel more like it tomorrow. Or the absolute classic, I just work better under pressure. They honestly convinced themselves that delaying the work was a smart, strategic choice.
But here is the deadline reality. When that deadline finally hit and forced these students to start, not a single one of them was glad they waited. 0. Every single student reported that they desperately wished they had started earlier, they wished they had more time, and, this is the big one, they all realized the task wasn't actually anywhere near as bad as they had built it up to be in their heads. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the core revelation of this entire explainer. You are not avoiding the task itself. You are avoiding how you think the task is going to make you feel. Your brain associates the work with this extreme dread, but your brain is simply wrong. The dread is a total illusion created by your panicked amygdala.
All right, let's fix this. Section 5, how to just start.
So, what's the game plan? How do we use these 20 years of cognitive science to fight back? We know the avoidance loop is super strong, but we can totally intentionally interrupt it. The framework is honestly embarrassingly simple, but neurologically it is profound. Step 1, catch and name the emotion. The second you notice you're color-coding your desk instead of working, stop. Say it out loud, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling afraid my work won't be good enough. Just the act of naming that emotion forces your brain to switch control from your panicked amygdala right back to your rational action taker. Step 2, make the task stupidly small. Step 3, just start for 5 to 10 minutes and completely ignore the outcome.
Let's look at what stupidly small really means in practice. If your goal is to write a whole essay tonight, your amygdala is going to sound the alarm and you will flee. That is a massive threat. But if you change your task to, I am just going to open a Google Doc and type completely random thoughts for exactly 10 minutes, well, that is so incredibly small that it flies right under your brain's alarm system. There's literally no threat there. Or take working out. Don't tell your brain you have to do some grueling, hour-long session. Make your task exclusively to put on your running shoes and step outside your front door. That's it. You don't need to worry about finishing, you don't need to worry about performing well, you only need the absolute tiniest possible physical action to break that initial paralysis.
Because here is the absolute truth, backed by all the science that I want you to take away today. The dread of starting is almost always significantly worse than the actual doing. Once you get past that initial 5 to 10 minute threshold, the task flows. The anxiety just evaporates because you are finally actually in motion.
So, I'm going to leave you with a direct challenge right now. You know the science. You know exactly how your brain has been tricking you. So what stupidly small task are you going to start the literal second this explainer ends? Don't load up another explainer. Don't organize your perfectly clean desk. Shut this down, make the task tiny, and just start. You've totally got this.